And something tells me this is going to be a lively programme. Now, the ultimate have-it-all female dream. A high-powered job and a nanny at home looking after the kids. But fewer women make it to the top and childcare costs are going through the roof. Should women rethink competing with men for scarce jobs and go back to being housewives? In a moment, Andrew Stone is joining us from Pineapple Dance Studios, who thinks that's a ridiculous idea. What do you think? Unemployment rates are increasing and the number of unemployed women is now at its highest since the Thatcher years. In tight financial times, it appears employers prefer to employ men. Is this just another battle on the road to equality, or time to reassess what's most important, work or parenting?
Clever girl.
Some studies show that children do better emotionally and educationally if one parent stays at home. Childcare costs are rising rapidly, and in an average family, one partner's wage goes on nursery costs. Would it make more sense for women to stay at home instead and look after the children? Polls have shown that more than 50% of people would prefer not to work if they have kids. And if women were to leave the workplace, there would be more jobs for men who could support their families. But why should it be women who give up their careers? In this week's A-level results, girls once again outperformed boys. Shouldn't society want the best and the brightest to be in work? And women have been fighting for equal treatment at work for decades. Why should they give up now, just because of the recession? So, should women take a back seat in difficult economic times? Or is this just a bad excuse for good old-fashioned sexism? If you have a webcam, you can make your point by Skype. You can join in the conversation on Twitter, phone, text or email. The details are all on the screen. Now, it might be tempting for me to be at home with the children this morning, John, but do you think that's where I should be?
Yeah. I mean, who's cooking your Sunday roast? It's an absolute disgrace.
Their father.
I'm pulling your leg. But no, in essence, yes, I actually do believe we had a better society when women stayed at home and looked after the kids. It could be a fella, whichever way it works round in your relationship, but one parent should be at home, and I'd say it should be the woman, because the woman is the nurturer.
Julie?
Well, when you actually told me what this topic was before we came on the programme, I thought you were having a laugh. I thought I'd woken up in some TARDIS, found myself back in the 1950s.
Exactly.
You know, would we sit here and have a conversation about apartheid in South Africa and say, well, all these black people who we're used to looking after our children, cleaning our houses, driving our buses, cleaning our latrines out, really, they shouldn't be given proper jobs because they're there to service us, and we had a better society, under apartheid. We wouldn't even be having this discussion. Yes, John, it may well have been better for men, but this isn't an either or.
No, it was better for families, Judith.
This isn't an either or.
It was better for families.
All right, what about all those women? What about all these women who have no children, who do not live with men, who are single parents? What we should be doing is making sure that those women are encouraged to go out to work. You can't have it both ways. You've got Cameron saying lazy, scrounging single mothers who get blamed for everything because they stay at home with their children. What's different from her to some Doris Day figure baking cookies waiting for you to come home and paint your face?
Before you come back in, I can't
paint it in that way.
I can't invite Andrew Stone into the studio, but not ask him to contribute.
Let's have your bit.
Well, what's your upbringing first, Andrew?
Well, my mum was a foster parent, but also, you know, she worked very hard to get me through dance classes and stuff like that, as well as my father. But I mean, I just want to say that basically.
Did she stay at home with you?
She did stay at home with me, but I'm a great believer in equilibrium, and I think that, you know, if you play the numbers games, you know, if you took all the men out of the workplace, there'd be more jobs for women, you know. So I just think that basically, you know, they add a great emotional environment into the actual workplace. And I think women can do a job just as strong as men can.
No, of course they can, and I'm not saying that, and that's why I won't be painting into this Doris Day way, which fits Julie's feminist agenda, of course. What I'm saying is the tax breaks in this country and the whole tax system in this country has been geared up to getting women, almost as soon as the umbilical cord has been cut, back into the workplace. I think that's bad for society. I think there should be tax breaks so that she can stay at home if she wants. Let me finish. And also, I do not believe that women should be treated as second-class citizens when they do the most important job, which is motherhood and bringing up the next generation. No, it is it's a fair point.
Look,
why is your problem with that?
Parenting is parenting.
Exactly.
Look, if you're actually breastfeeding or bottle feeding, it's an issue about where your physical presence is.
So you think it's good to go straight back to work, do you?
Some women don't actually...
And you talked about apartheid and having black
good?
people looking after children. All that happens now, I don't know whether it's in Susanna's case, but in professional middle-class women's case, it's the East Europeans who now look after their children. And I'm saying that people like Susanna, perhaps on a Sunday, should be at home looking after their kids.
As I was saying, single mothers get blamed for everything. There are lots of women who do choose not to live in the regular family unit, who don't have children. What are you going to say? We're going to go back to the 1950s and say there aren't enough jobs to go around?
No.
There is no way that this is ever going to go backwards.
Shall we
talk about a good society by going back 50 years? Can you imagine how it looks to children to have daddy coming in with his briefcase, providing the money, and mummy being at home mopping up the sick all day?
Shall we ask Michelle Dixon?
Yeah, and are you saying it wasn't better then when we had proper families, when we were a bit more judgmental about what families should be? No, not just from a male perspective at all.
Michelle Dixon is a stay-at-home mum. Michelle, are you a throwback to the 1950s?
No, not at all. No. I feel I'm empowered because I've got a choice in what I do.
Well said.
I chose to stay at home when we decided to have a family. We decided to have a mortgage that we could afford just on one wage, so that it gave me the choice to be at home.
Do you think then that stay-at-home mums are in some way painted as I don't know, well, as we were saying, you know, Doris Day sort of figures, or that there's pressure on women to go back to work?
There is pressure, but some women want to go back to work, and I think that's the important thing, that we all have a choice, where possible, to either be at home or to go to work if that's what you prefer to do.
Stephen Moxon is author of The Women Racket and also joins us on webcam. Should women have the choice, Steve?
Oh, of course they could. The most important point is women tend to be less attached to the labour market, so they lose their jobs in a recession. They preferentially work in service and public sectors and in part-time and low-grade jobs. And there are two fundamental underlying reasons for that. Women's preferences. Catherine Hakim, leading expert of women in the workplace, she points out that overall only 10 to 15% of women choose or would prefer to work full-time and continuously like men. Only a quarter of those are careerists. That's less than 5%. Most women want at most to work a job that is part-time, that fits with their home and social life. And below all that, there are fundamental differences between the sexes in motivation. A man without a job basically has no life, effectively. Women choose men with status. And in our world, obviously, that means job and money.
Steve, there are some sighs and shaking of the head in the studio here. Andrew?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, you know, men should be more emotionally connected. They should actually be encouraged to show their emotions, be basically part of the family. I'm all about 50-50, and I think it should be a compromise between basically what you want individually, and not all about being one way all one way.
Yeah, I think the reason why so few women go back to work, and Hakim has been ridiculously, I mean, she's discredited as an academic in terms of her work.
Hang on, she's not here to defend herself, so we need to be careful about what we say about an individual who can't talk for themselves.
It's just utter nonsense to suggest that women just would choose to be at home if they can't afford it, for one thing. Everything is made difficult for women in terms of returning to the workplace. We have not got any state-controlled childcare to speak of. That's why we're talking about, for middle-class women, nannies from Eastern Europe. Most working-class women, in fact, no working-class women I know, can afford it. And all the working-class women that I know cannot afford not to go back to work. It's an utterly ridiculous idea that we're even asking the question, should women have the right to choose? We're not infants. We're not living under apartheid. This is an equal and open society.
It's not Victorian times.
You mentioned an individual, and as I say, I ask you not to cast aspersions over the professional life of people who aren't here to defend themselves, because that would be unfair. But isn't there a valid point being made in that research that Steve has mentioned, that a lot of women simply would choose to be at home but feel they have to work, either because of society pressure or economic pressure?
It's utterly ridiculous to suggest that one person can actually present a group of statistics that speaks for all women and the entire labour market in this country.
But that's what surveys and research does.
We have actually moved on from talking about whether or not women should be allowed to go to work. What we've done is we've made it almost impossible for the majority of women, unless you're talking about very privileged women, to go back to work and to rely on their partner to do their half of the childcare.
I mean, that's the economic argument, but the problem here as well is that we've also basically devalued motherhood, and we have got a situation. My wife is a very clever woman. She's got a first, she's also got an MA. She's now going back to do a teaching course because our kids are now 18 and 16. We were lucky with the economic wherewithal. We made an equal decision. It wasn't me chaining her to the kitchen sink, and if she was here and you made that assertion, she'd have you for breakfast. The bottom line is this. No, the bottom line is that women, we have devalued motherhood in our society. We should create tax breaks to have back the idea of a proper family, which I'm afraid is a man and a woman married, bringing up their children.
In your world,
together.
John, but not for many people.
Well, it was a better world when people thought like that.
40% of adults over 30 don't live
They did
in
that
a
old-fashioned
nuclear
thing.
family.
They got married before they had children. Remember that? That old-fashioned thing? That idea of bringing up your family, giving them security.
Many women choose not to have children.
Let's speak to Judith Webb, who's been employed full-time.
Well, they can if they want, like you.
Hang on,
you don't want to have children, that's fine.
Let's get some more expert testimony on this. Judith Webb, former major there, it says Royal Signals, you've been employed full-time, raised your children at the same time. Do the kids lose out?
Not at all. I mean, my children, I really feel, have benefited from the fact that I've always been a working mum. It's very true that I was lucky to be able to combine motherhood with a full-time career after I'd left the army. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to do that in the army, but I became a headmistress. And the fact that I was always an independent, free-thinking person, we have fantastic discussions, debates and arguments at home, encouraging my children to be free-thinking. I'm not the stay-at-home mum. They've often had to do their own washing, and they certainly don't have anybody rushing around after tidying up. Not anything which I think is a priority. Right? Communication with one's children is the most important thing at all levels.
OK. John, it encourages independence from the children. Judith was saying when she went out to work, it provided them with
Did her children go to boarding school like a lot of forces kids, or were they in a school, in a day school?
They went to boarding school later.
Well, there you go then. End of argument, isn't it?
Hang on.
End of argument. That's how you managed to do the balance. You sent them off to boarding school. Come on, that's your argument over.
John, let Judith finish her point.
Ridiculous.
Okay.
Well, you've got a guest on who put her children in boarding school, and she's tried to tell me she was a mother at home with them.
Let me speak. They didn't go to boarding school until they were 13, and that's not for my benefit. That was for their benefit, and I feel that they gave a huge amount. When they were very small, I still worked. I actually have never not been full-time employed.
Yeah.
I didn't lose out. I was lucky to combine it because
Judith, I have to interrupt, and not because I want to stop you making a point, because as John says, it is a shame that unfortunately the sound quality didn't go to boarding school until they were 13. I mean, nobody's suggesting that these children stay at home and are on their own,
What I'm
John.
trying to say, Susanna, is if we valued motherhood and if we got back to a situation where there were tax breaks so that the dad could go out to work if he wanted, or as I said earlier, there are many stay-at-home dads now who do that as well. All I'm saying is, as a society, it was better when we had that.
Okay,
I don't recall the riots happening.
Clearly,
I don't recall the riots happening then. Do you?
Andrew, you work with a lot of women, presumably, who are
since I was 8 years
mums.
old. I mean, I've been around women all my life, and a lot of them ran dance schools or had other stuff going on. And you know, I mean,
if all those women, if all those working mums were taken out of the workforce, what kind of place would it be like?
Boring. That's one word, boring. It'd be absolutely boring. It'd be awful. I think it's, you know, life is colourful when you've got lots of different things going on, and I think, you know, it's a good reason to get out of bed in the morning. You know, go and see, you're going to talk to women about things that maybe you wouldn't talk to your best mate about, and vice versa. So
how many children have you got, Andrew?
None.
The point is, it's bad. It's actually bad.
I'm just asking the question. Well, because you haven't got a family, have you?
No, know about.
It's bad for women, and if women are unhappy, it's bad for their children. I mean, these are a very small group of extremely privileged women who can afford to be at home
Yeah.
Very.
No, I
and
accept
in
that.
fact, often I
accept
would really rather not go to work and take my dog out for a walk, play with the cats, that kind of thing.
Oh, is that all
but I
women do
can't
when they're
afford
at home,
to.
is it?
I can't afford
That's
to.
a very demeaning
so I
thing
work.
to say.
The point is that many women, because motherhood is so difficult if they don't have as much support as they should have from the father or from their partner, whoever they are, then they obviously want to stay at home because they're exhausted and because it's difficult for them to get back into the workplace. Many women don't get proper maternity benefits. This is an issue about class.
No, I accept that.
And I'm sorry
I accept
that you haven't had a working class woman on who can't afford not to go out to work telling her story, because there are legions of them.
OK, well, if you are, you can get in touch with the programme and you can continue discussing that issue on our website.